Welcome to the Excel training module. I am Dr. Jeff Slattery, and I'm going to be preparing these different video lectures for you. And so let's go ahead and get started. And some of this will seem a little bit herky-jerky here because I've got to do different things. I'm trying a new method to record these lectures. So just bear with me a little bit. And so what we're going to do today is we are going to introduce you to Excel. And there are various ways that you can do this. And one is by pressing down in the left-hand corner to get this screen up. And yours may look a little bit different. And then just press Excel. And that should, the Excel software should load and bring up, and you'll see a sheet that looks something like this. And I'm going to use a worksheet that's already been developed. So if I wanted to bring that up, I could just do that and bring that up and show you. So there are different ways that you can get Excel up. If you want to do just a blank worksheet, you can go through by, again, that right there, clicking on that. Okay, so what we want to do is to, in this particular lecture, and as I'll probably note in each one of these lectures, I try to keep these lectures to and I may try to keep these to under 30 minutes, but normally I don't want to go over 45 minutes, and I shoot for that time range of 30 to 45 minutes. So just if you're planning right now, this should last within that range sometime. So let's go ahead and get started with your Excel training. Some of you may be very familiar with this, and this is something that maybe you can skip over, or put this in fast mode or something like that so that you can go through it pretty quickly. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to make this very basic right from the beginning. And then other lectures are going to be more involved and show you things that you're going to be using throughout the semester. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Now, at the top of the page, you're going to see, and I'm trying to go around this, the border of this. This is what is called the ribbon. Okay? This is the ribbon interface. And there are different tabs on Excel. Right now I'm showing you File. Then there's Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, and View. And these are the tabs, and we're going to go through these in just kind of a brief description of what each one of them does. And for some of them, I'll say, okay, we are going to be using this when we get into some other things that we do in the course that you're in. So I'll go through some of these, and some of them I'll go over a little bit more than others. But anyway, this is called, again, this is called the ribbon. And this is really the control panel, if you want to think of it that way, for your car that you're going to be driving, and the car is called Excel. You also have up here is what is called a quick access bar. And by default, you have these buttons right here. You can add more buttons, and I'll show you here in a second how you can add more buttons, customize the the quick access toolbar. But anyway, I'll get to that here in a second. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it right now. This is the save button, so anytime you want to save your worksheet, you click on this button, or if you're using a touch screen, you can touch that button up there at the top. This is the undo and redo buttons. If you make a mistake and you type something into a cell that you don't want in that Excel and you've already hit enter, which puts it in there, and the other is now gone, you can click the undo statement. The redo statement will go ahead and cycle through so that you can it's the opposite of undo. Okay, so you can go back to what you did do after you've hit the undo. This button right here, if you click on it, you can customize your quick access toolbar. You can put the following things, and notice the things that are in there right now are checked. If you want to put in open a new worksheet, or open a current one that you've already done and you have to go search for it, you can hit spelling, print preview, sort ascending descending, touch mouse mode. This allows you to, if you have a touch screen, it allows you to make the screen so that the areas are a little bit bigger, so that you have a little bit more room to touch. More commands, you can go in there and find other commands. Show below the ribbon, you can change where your quick access menu occurs. Okay, so I probably spent more time on that than I want to, but I just clicked, and I'll go back again because I didn't mention that. I clicked the File tab. I clicked the File tab. Now, you don't use this very often when you're building your models and stuff like that, but let me go over just a couple of these things. The info screen allows you to do the things that are listed here: protect your workbook, inspect your workbook, manage your workbook, browse viewer options. And if you click on those, this little dialog box, if you click on it, it tells you the various things that you can do. All right, and this is we're really doing just an intro to Excel. If you want to become an expert on Excel, you can purchase a book, or go through the help menus and figure out how to do all these things. But I just want to show you a couple things in here. If you want to do a new worksheet, bring one up, and it brings it up in another menu. And I forgot to mention this, but it depends upon which Excel that you have, and even then you may get differences here in terms of what pops up for different types of templates that have already been developed. They've been developed by other people, and you can go through here, and it brings up some commonly used ones that are here. You can notice here a wedding budget, stock symbols analysis, calendars. You can do an academic calendar. Somebody's made up an academic calendar. So there are a lot of different template files that have actually been already done by other people in their templates, and you can use them. Here is a tour, so if you want to go over and do other things in Excel and even go through a tour that's kind of like what I'm going to be doing with my Excel training. You can search business, personal, industry, financial management, logs, calculators. There are different types of calculators. I was just playing with this before. And you notice that there are 153 different types of calculators. And notice it's got a payment comparison, deferred tax rate calculator, loan calculator, home equity versus auto calculator, and so on. I'm not going to go through all these. It's probably getting pretty boring right here, but I've never looked at this one, but a sugar gram calculator. But anyway, let me go ahead and here's the save file and save as file. If you want to rename the file, you have to tell it where you're going to be putting it, and you can type in a new name. Okay, and then if you hit save, then it would place it in documents. Or if you wanted to place it on a jump drive, I have 2 jump drives currently in, you'd click on those and it would put it in those. So you always need to, and you know, I'm not sure how computer savvy you are, but you need to always be aware of where you're saving things, because if you save something on a hard drive and you leave, like you're in a computer lab or something like that, it's not, you can't get it until you go back to that computer. Or if you want to save it on jump drive, save it on the one you want. We're going to go over print a little bit later in the training. Share, export, publish, those are all different types of things you can do. You can send them to the cloud and so on, email them or other things like that. Export, you can create a PDF file. You can publish them to Power BI, which frankly I've never done. Close, here's one that I want to go over because you're going to be having to do this later in the semester. So if you go File, and then I'm going to go back to this again. I'm going to go back to where we were. File, Options, and up pops this box right here. We are going to be using add-ins later in the semester, okay? And I will go through this at another point in time on another lecture, but just to give you an idea of you know what is contained in these different tabs in the ribbon. So I'll go ahead and X out of that right now. And let's go over these, and I'm going to go over them fairly quickly because again I want to try to keep this to as short a lecture as I possibly can. The home key is, it's kind of like home. This is where you do an awful lot of your work, okay? So the home key, you can cut, you can copy, you can use your format painter, and then every time you see something like this, it's called a drop-down menu, and you can click on it and something happens. Here is, it shows you what's in your clipboard. So if you copied things, several things, and maybe you want to get something that you've done, you know, 4 or 5 iterations ago, then you can do that. Click off of it and you're back to normal. You can change the font size of your print. You can change what type of font that you have. You can do bold, italics, underline, and there's different types of underline. You can underline with once, underline with double. In financial statements, you might use that quite a bit. Here's the options for whether you can make in borders, and here are all the different types of options. You can highlight cells, and all of these things throughout the semester I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to show you these things, but again, I just want to go over this very quickly to give you an idea of what's in the ribbon. You can change the font color. This is, you can increase font size or decrease it by right there. You can change how the text or numbers are shown in the cells right here. This is, you can angle things, you can do vertical text, rotate text, and so on with that cell. Here's wrap text, and I'll show you an example here of wrap text here in a little bit. Merge and center, excuse me. And notice you've got an alignment drop-down box, and so it's going to give you a lot of different options here that you can customize things a little bit more when you're doing your text. Here is when you're formatting cells, and here are all the different kinds, the ways. And let me just mention a couple things here. Excel is, we're working with 2016, but Excel has been around for, well, I'm not sure how many years, but I would guess at least 30 years probably. Its precursor to that was another software program called Lotus, which is what I learned spreadsheet software on, but Excel really became the standard probably about 30 years ago. So it's retained a lot of things that it had from its early beginnings, and it's added new things, and there are a lot of different ways that you can do things. You can do things with keystrokes, or you can go to the different tabs and so on. Now, I'm not going to go over, like I said, all of these things. These are more specialized types of things that I'm showing you right here. If you want to insert a row or a column or insert a sheet, there are different things that you can do. If you want to delete cells, here's the format, and you can do that. Here's some other things, and we'll talk about these as we go through the semester. Some of them, not all of these things. But anyway, again, back to the Insert tab. Now I clicked on the Insert tab, and notice you can do a lot of different things here. You can insert pictures, online pictures. You can draw shapes. You can do screenshots, quickly add a snapshot of any window that's open in the desktop to your document. And frankly, some of these things I really have never used before, and I'm not too familiar with them other than what it tells you here. Now, we're going to have one lecture on charts, and here's where we do charts all along in here. These text box, we can put a header or footer, that's for printing. We can do word art. We can bring a signature line in, an object in. We can do equations or put certain symbols into the worksheet, and that's in the Insert tab. Page layout, we can change the margins, the orientation, and orientations are portrait or landscape. Portrait is, you know, the long side of the paper is up and down, and if we go landscape, it flips it over so that it's horizontal. So again, I'm not going to go over all of these things, but just basically you can have certain themes, go over some of these things. Formulas. This is if we're doing a lot of more complex models and all that, we can come in and do just our different formulas. It has financial formulas, logical formulas, the text function, time and date, math and trigonometry, some more functions here. One of the things is this right here, and I talk about this in a later lecture. These are all, this is called your formula auditing section, and it's a group of different things that you can do to help audit, debug or audit a particular worksheet. Calculation options, you can turn on and off the calculation, the manual calculation. And again, much more involved than we're probably going to get, but there will be things from probably each one of these tabs that I do show you. Here's the data tab, and probably the thing that I use most often is the sort tab. In the data tab, and you can see that I've already added these as add-ins, and again I'll show you how to do this later, but when we're doing linear programming models, we're going to be using something called Solver. Okay? When we're doing statistical types of things, we're going to use our data analysis tools. And I'll go ahead and click on this right now just to show you. When you click on data analysis, it brings up another box, and there are a lot of statistical types of things that it has routines to do in here. Okay, descriptive statistics, calculating the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, and so on. Exponential smoothing in forecasting. You can actually have it create a histogram, do a moving average. Here's one that we use quite often in quantitative classes, regression, and so on. So anyway, that's in the data tab. Review is it allows us to check our spelling if we want to maybe find another word that is a little bit better for what we want to in our communication, and various things that we can do in here. We can put in comments in our worksheet, and you'll see some of the worksheets that I have will put comments in there. But anyway, protect and share the sheet, track changes, and notice when we went to file originally, we had some of these things in here. Okay, the view tab allows us to change the way that we look at the worksheet. This I used to use quite often, freeze of panes, where it'll show one part of the worksheet and it freezes it there, and then if we go to another part of the worksheet, it goes there, but it doesn't change. It still has part of that frame on the worksheet. Split, hide, view, and macros, and we're not going to talk about macros very much this semester. I may, or in this training, I may just do a couple things, but that would be in the tab, in the view tab. All right, back to home, and let me show you a couple of other things. If we want to move around the worksheet, there are a lot of different ways, and I'll cover that in another lecture. But down here at the bottom, we can move the worksheet by pulling the tab over, and it doesn't really help right now. Okay, this is the normal view. This is the page layout view, page break preview. This allows us to increase the magnification that we want, and normally I don't have anything in the worksheet right now, so it's not really doing too much. Okay, so that's just a very quick view. Oh, and over here on the side, if we want to go down the worksheet, we can go that. We can use that, or we can use on your keyboard the page up, page down, home keys, and so on. And again, I'll probably go out over that in another lecture. And those are especially important when we have large worksheets. So I'm going to bring up another worksheet that I've just very quickly put some information in here. All right. So here's a worksheet, and I just at this point in time on in the NFL, I've taken NFC division and just pulled the wins and losses, the records from the various teams in that division, Vikings, Packers, and the Bears, and just to show you a couple things. Okay, normally in a worksheet, and I'm going to talk about this all throughout the learning modules, you want to make sure that you document things so that you know what the worksheets are. And I try to be as descriptive as possible when I'm naming my files. This is Excel training example number 1, so that's pretty descriptive. And if I want to put NFC Central Division or something like that in there, okay. Now notice I pulled this out of there. But suppose, and this will be really quickly how we can enter formulas and functions and all those types of things into there. All right. So, well, first of all, back to the basics here. Our worksheets are organized into columns and rows. This particular cell is cell B7, and it tells you that right here. Okay, your name box. I could have done a range name for that and said wins, Vikings wins, or something like that. But, okay, B7, that's cell B7. This is cell C7, and it tells me where the losses are. This is cell D7 that tells me where the number of ties, okay? Now, right here, I have put in a function, and I'll retype it in. And notice that function is right here. This is called your formula bar. I'm going to go ahead and delete that out of there, okay? I could have put the number of game plays. To start a formula, you hit the equal sign, and frankly, as I mentioned before, I learned on Lotus, so sometimes you'll see me put a plus sign, and it's really the same thing. In Lotus, the plus was to start a formula. In Excel, it's the equal sign. So if I want to put a formula in there and determine the number of games, I could have put B7 plus C7 plus D7 and hit enter, and it would have calculated that. Okay? So you can tell Excel that I want to add B7, C7, D7, but there are ways that we can make our calculations a little bit easier. And these are called functions. And if you hit this key right here, this is an insert function key. Okay? This is, and one of the functions that we can use is sum. We could also average things, is another thing. Calculate standard deviation. In linear regression, calculate the y-intercept, the correlation. So there are a lot of different functions. And by pressing that key right there, it says, okay, what do you want to do? And it will normally bring up and give you certain options. And I probably, let me go ahead and delete this one that's in there. I just hit the delete key. Now if I want to do a function, it comes up and it says, okay, what do you want to do? So I could hit sum and hit OK, and it would sum B7 through D7. It really kind of knows, okay? And then now here's the next thing that I want to show you very quickly, and that is that once you have this formula right here, you can copy it down in one of two ways. You can drag and hit enter, and it copies them all the way down. And notice what it does. It changes the references. Okay? It changes the references. Now, we're going to get to something called relative referencing and absolute referencing. And we're going to do that in the lecture. Okay? Now, to get the winning percentage, what do you think we have to do? Well, I want to, I can either do it by typing in there, or I can go up to there into the formula bar and start typing things in. To calculate the winning percentage, I'd take B7 divided by E7. Hit enter, and there it is. It calculates the winning percentage. What if I want to copy that down? That right there, and it copies all of them down. Now, here's another way that you can copy. Highlight that cell right there by clicking on it. Click copy, and then click on there and drag it down to that whole range and hit enter, and there it is. And I think what I'll do is just a couple more things here, because we're getting close to being the 30 to 45 minute time range here. So let me do a couple more things and then we'll stop for today. Now, formatting. If I wanted to make these cells all the same, what I can do is go up here and decrease or increase the decimals. Or I could go up to and click on General, and then up pops certain things, numbers, generals, numbers, currency. So there are different things that I can do here. Let me click back off of that, and let me just do it this way. Okay? So if I click on that, it's going to make them all the same decimals. Okay, and that would increase it. This I'm clicking on right up at the top in the ribbon. I'm decreasing, and let's say I want to get to 3 decimals. So that's how I do that. Now, suppose that, and notice here, one thing I forgot to show you is by default, it makes the columns a certain width. It's making them 8.43. Now notice how I've clicked on, I get to the one side, and that means I can change the width of column H. So I could change it to, let's say, I probably won't get right on here, but let's say I wanted to change it to 15. And mine, I'm too shaky sometimes that can't hit exactly. It changed it to 15. Okay. Now another thing that you can do is up here, I talked about when we first did that. If you want to wrap text, okay, suppose you do that and you hit that right there. It's going to make it so that it does that. And notice that what? Those things weren't showing up, were they? Now it's not going to do that one, but look what happens if I decrease the size of the column. Okay, so you can change the widths of the columns. There are a couple other ways that you can do it, but the easiest way is just to grab it. I had made that 10, but if I want to make it 12, then I'd go and make it over to 12. Okay, so you can change the widths of the columns, and you can also change the height of the rows if you want. And you can do that in a couple different ways, but I don't have time right now to show you those different ways. Now back to the point. Suppose that I wanted to make a column that says, okay, the points that you score per game. Okay, to insert a column, I highlight and notice, and again I'll do it. I went up here and I clicked on that, and it highlights the whole column. Into your ribbon and insert. If you insert, it'll insert a column because it knows you highlight columns. Or if you click on this, it'll say insert, sheet columns, and you can click on that. And notice how it puts it to the left. Okay, So let's say I wanted to enter points per game, okay, per game. Points per game. And how would I calculate points per game? I can just enter it in here. I hit my equal to sign, and it's what? It's G7 divided by E. I'm making it points per game. E points per game. E7. Yes, that's correct. And notice how it highlights. And again, they're averaging 19.86 points per game. Now, what happens if I copy this formula over to here? What does it do? This is now points given up per game, because what did it do? It took I7, it keeps that same relative reference, I7 divided by G7, which is actually not correct, is it? Okay, so it took, again, it made it I7 divided by I7 divided by G7, okay, which is not correct. The points given up per game, now look at what it does, is suppose that I did this. I'm going up to the formula bar and I type in $sign there and $sign there. That's called absolute referencing. You can type in your dollar signs, or you can hit the F4 key, and then it will highlight what you want, and then you can hit that. Now what I can do is copy that over to there, and what did it do? It said it relative referenced, it knew to go over to this cell right here, which would be 104 divided by now 7, okay? Divided by 7. That's the difference between relative referencing and absolute referencing. When you put the dollar signs in here, that absolute references it. Okay, so I think I'll stop here. That's a pretty good introduction to Excel. And let me go ahead and get back to the screen that we're in. Okay, and let me see if I can't do this in another way. Okay, here we are, and here I am. So that is an introduction to Excel. We're going to be going over a lot of different things because we're going to be using Excel quite a bit in the course that you're in. And so this is the first lecture. Just wanted to give you kind of an introduction there and how to navigate around an Excel worksheet. You're going to be gaining a lot of practice as you move through this course. So anyway, we'll go ahead and stop here today. Hopefully I didn't write down what time I started, so hopefully I hit in that range of the 30 to 45 minute range. And so anyway, we'll see you in another lecture.